And what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players, an MLS podcast. At this year's All-Star game, Don Garber gave his annual State of the League address, and he dropped a ton of teasers and information about the league. And naturally, we need to give our thoughts about it, but we couldn't just do it with just us, so we had to bring on some of the best of the best. It's John from Loud and Proud Orlando. John, how you doing?
Hi, Andrew. How you doing? Connor, good to see you again.
Yep. And speaking of Connor, he's finally had his de-stress time. We were together for 3 whole days and quite a long car ride. And he needed a little bit of time away, but now that he's decompressed, he's back. Connor, how you doing? I miss you.
That was such a brutal car ride. And not because of you. It's because of the driver. The driver was just driving us nuts.
Oh, come on. He only missed 3 exits.
It's disappointing we missed our opportunity to do a live in-person recorded episode, but maybe we'll have our
Yeah.
shot another time.
Yeah, we will. We'll make that happen one day, but it won't be today because today we are on Zoom and we are chatting about this State of the League address. But before we do any of that, as always, we need to talk about some cool scarves. I'm going to send it over to John first to let us know what he's rocking.
I've got the Orlando City Open Cup 2022 winner's scarf, the champion scarf. So there you go. A classic. And
Is
one of
that
our only trophy is a major league team. So,
did
gotta have a
did that
scarf.
did that come with any drone cameras or pictures from the Sacramento training
No,
site?
no, none of that.
uh,
They'll never let us live that down, will they?
No, I we made a joke about that in one of our other episodes, and one of the Orlando fans got in there was pretty poignant to say, hey, don't we don't joke about that anymore. So uh, we do it for fun, and we do it with friends. But Connor, what are you rocking? You've got a neat one on.
Yeah, I've got a rash on the back of my neck now from wearing this one, but I'll break it out for a friend of the pod. So I'm bringing out the Orlando scarf. It was at the bottom of my pile because I try not to touch it if I don't need to, but I'll make an exception for today.
I do think it's pretty funny that it is one of the first ones you bought when you had the opportunity to, but we move.
It was one of the ones that was heavily on sale. It was like $5 or something like that.
You
I
know why
found it.
that is? And I can tell you because I sold that scarf in 2015. That was one of the original scarves that they made. So I remember how old that scarf is, and I'm not surprised it was that cheap because they've
It's a
not
nice
sold
one.
it in 10
It's a nice
years.
one.
It's
It
got the
is.
eyes on it. It's got the
I hate to
lion
admit it.
eyes. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But there you go.
Well, I thought John was going to break out the one that I've got on my wall here. So I went a little bit different, trying to stay on theme. Since we're talking about Don Garber's State of the League and how the league has grown, I went with an original '96 San Jose Clash blue and black. So tried to mix it up a little bit, which is great. So like let's just jump into this here. Now that we're here, we got through our scarves. We're going to talk about 4 major topics today. We're going to talk about this calendar change that keeps getting teased and is inching closer to being accepted. We're going to talk about the Apple TV deal. We're going to talk about the new competition format, and we're going to talk about some sponsorship growth. But I do want to start, I think, with the calendar change first because it came out that Don Garber teased it. We thought that he was going to drop the news, but he just was teasing that they were talking about it. But he used the phrase that he believes that alignment with the rest of the soccer world in terms of the calendar makes sense. So it seems the league is moving in that direction. There was a rumor that 27 out of 30 teams have agreed to make this move. So they're working on the details. We've talked about this for quite a while. As they were teasing this a couple months ago. So we've shared our thoughts. But John, I want to get your thoughts because you seem pretty you've got a really strong opinion on this, which is what we love on this show because I get strong opinions, our guests have strong opinions, and Connor's a fence straddler. So I want to hear some more strong opinions. What do you
Hey,
think
that's
about
not
the
fair.
but it's true. What do you think about the change?
I've definitely got strong opinions. I think it's 100% the right thing to do. They should have done it years ago. I personally think this will do more for accelerating the league forward than having Lionel Messi here will.
Ooh.
Mainly because Lionel Messi is going to eventually retire. Yes, he's bringing eyes now, but we have to think what comes after him, what other teams can bring in, and a lot of it for me is to do with the fact that the way that we run our league right now is all backwards. So we're having to overpay for guys in the winter and we're losing guys in the summer. And if you ask all the GMs, I know they did a Sportico study. I can't remember when it was, I think like a year ago. And a lot of them saying, we really need to fix this because we're getting screwed. Like you said, Andrew, 27 of the 30 owners rumored to do it. I think that shows that the owners realize that they're getting screwed and they want to do something about it.
I love it. Yeah, I think I've definitely gone closer to your side, but I want to see what Connor has to say and if he's leaning on one side of the fence more than the other.
You say this like I don't have the most viewed clip on our channel, but regardless, here I'm picking a side because I absolutely and completely agree with what John said. To the all the way to the T of I think this would be more helpful for the league than having Messi in, at least in the long term. I mean, I think Messi is going to bring a lot of fans, and I would say probably there's going to be a chunk of them that stick around even after Messi's gone. But I really do feel like it's going to play a big role in the long run. All the stuff that John was saying, I think we'll be able to sell players better. Like they won't have to leave mid-season in terms of summer transfers. You're going to be able to bring in guys at a better time in the window. You won't have to bring someone in the mid-season and have your David Goss player of the year. I really do think it's going to be the long term right call. The one thing I will say is that I think it's going to take, first of all, it's definitely going to take some time to implement. I think it's going to be hard to kind of like fully make that switch and figure out everything logistically. And I also don't think it's going to be like this instant switch. Like as soon as we fix the calendar, we're going to see like Erling Haaland and Kylian Mbappe show up. But I think over time, it's going to play like a big factor in terms of improving our like stature in the transfer market.
Dude, I can't wait for the anti-MLS crowd on Twitter who is complaining about, oh, our schedule is backwards and it doesn't make sense. We need to be like the rest of the world. The very first season being like, none of this makes any sense. America messes everything up. Rah! Like, I can't wait for it. Hook it to my veins because you know it's coming. I am also in agreement with you. I think when we did our first iteration of this, we both were on the fence, Connor. I know I give you some dirt for it, but we both were on the fence. But I think we both were also leaning towards, in the long run, this is better than it wouldn't be. Right? We talked about how right now the calendar has issues, but it also has benefits. And if you were to switch it, essentially you're just switching your benefits and your issues to the other side. However, the feeling was that yeah, the when you switch the benefits, you're still going to come out net positive. The question was always just how much of a net positive. And I think you guys hit a lot of the good parts, right? The impact on transfers is huge, and it's one of the bigger things that we need to focus on. John, I think you hit it perfectly right. I mentioned the same thing. You need to overpay in the transfer market, or you're getting ripped off in the key parts of your moments in your season, and that sucks, right? Changing the schedule will allow you to play a bigger part in the global game and be a part of the window, which is great for fans of teams, though it may make the USMNT anti-MLS group cringe because they're not going to get to see their 18-year-olds play in the end of the season. But we move from there. I talked about the 27 out of the 30 teams. I think I don't remember the last time they voted on something with this much of an overwhelming majority, right? Usually it's like 20 out of 30 or 21. Like it's just barely over the majority. Here it seems like a huge push in the right direction. So it's more of a when, not when, but how it gets done. And that's where my focus is, right? So obviously everybody up north, including my friends up in New York over there, are always worried about the cold months, right? Oh, I'm not going to go out there in February and watch a game, right? Well, we already play in February. We also already play in December. Like this is not something that's completely out of the ordinary, and you are going to be able to see examples from other countries. Like Germany, for example, will take off for 6 weeks in the winter and be able to push that off. I also really, really like the idea of this now that we see what Leagues Cup has turned into, right? This little 1 week thing with a couple games at the end. I've got no problem making that a almost quasi MLS is back tournament, right? In the middle of that window, you've got 4 weeks off, then you go down to Florida, Texas, California, whatever, and you do it as a ramp up heading into the second part of the season. No problem with that at all, and I think that's actually really clever. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that too, John.
So for me, I think it's more important about when you play your playoffs. We're gonna have to play a lot of games regardless in the winter months. Okay, so a lot of that argument is moot. What's significant is when your playoffs are. I'd rather be playing our playoffs in April, May time and go up against, the MLB and the NBA than what happens in the fall where you see so many people just vacate MLS stadiums because they want to go watch their favorite football team. I see it here in Orlando. A lot of people want to go watch UCF, want to go watch the Gators, want to go watch, their favorite NFL team, and then the attendance drops. So it's better to do that early season. Yes, you're still going to have to compete, but we're going to have to compete now. So for me, it makes more sense to do that. I also think that the summer, you see a lot of fans just not coming because they're going on summer vacation. Here down south, it gets so hot that a lot of people just don't want to go to the stadium, similar like to in the winter where it's so cold that they don't want to go to the stadium. So I think you kind of can't win either way there, but the benefits that you get from aligning, like we talked with the transfers, and not only that, Andrew, another great benefit is the international windows and the fact that we won't have any more of this problem of MLS players only being available at certain times and other internationals being available other times. And I don't like the phrase, but no more camp cupcake will be a big, plus of this whole change.
Yeah, it'll be super interesting how the national team rotates around this as well. Like you mentioned with the January camp that won't quite exist anymore. But one of the things that's interesting to me is the idea of when people are coming, because I think one of the things that we talked about, and Connor, I'm going to get your thoughts on this in a second, was everybody loved the summer games because they were out of school and they could go without having to worry about working around school schedules and stuff. And you mentioned that it would be, people going on summer vacation or things like that. Connor, do you think that has an impact on attendance numbers, whether they play this schedule or the other schedule?
I mean, I think regardless of which schedule you have, you're going to have extremes in weather. I mean, New York. I mean, listen, I'm the last person in this call to be complaining about this, considering where both of you live. But New York has been brutally hot and humid this summer, and it's been disgusting, and I've hated every second of it. And I'll be honest, I don't think that that's any bet. Like sitting in a game, if I'm sitting at a game and it's 95 degrees and it's 80% humidity outside, I really don't think that that's that much worse than sitting at a game where it's 20 and snowing. Like both of them are going to suck no matter what. But sure, your attendance numbers are probably going to go a little bit down in either of those situations. But like, if I'm being, and I'm totally biased in this, I'm 100%, I will admit up front, I'm biased in this. I would so much rather watch a snow game than a game that's played in 100 degrees. And I'm biased in this because I will never forget the Atlanta Minnesota game where we absolutely stomped on Minnesota, but the snow game was so much fun. And whenever we get a snow game, I feel like people get hyped for it. So I almost feel like maybe the winter would be a little bit more fun if we're going to go with one of the weather extremes. So I don't necessarily think that like that part of it is going to be an issue in terms of like summer vacations and that kind of thing. I mean, I feel like people will make time to come to games even if it's not necessarily like their summer vacation. Like if we flip the calendar, because like people will still go to watch the other sports. They'll go to watch the NFL. They'll go to watch the NBA. The games are on the weekends. I think people generally will, if they want to go, I think they'll be able to make the time to go, even if they don't necessarily have off from like school.
John, you see how down bad he is, an Atlanta fan? He has to go all the way back to 2017 for good memories. How bad is that?
Wow.
And against 2017 Minnesota too.
Let's go back to your last
2017 Minnesota too.
I was going to say, Andrew, we don't, the guy's got an MLS Cup at least. He's got that. We don't.
Yeah, great. He won a 4-game tournament. I've got 3 shields, buddy. Yeah, call me when you can be the best.
You mean your dinner plate?
Yeah, call me when you're the best team over 34, buddy. So for me, this is a moot point, right? So experiencing games in brutally cold weather as a player in Alfred, which I'm not talking about like stadiums and stuff, but I've been in those games where I've been cold and uncomfortable. And then just this past June, I was sitting in Bank of America Stadium watching Bayern Benfica in 97 degrees. 97 degrees was significantly the worst thing I've ever been a part of. I was so uncomfortable. I couldn't enjoy the game. I barely could watch the game because all I was doing was taking my glasses off and wiping my face, putting it back on 2 seconds later, wiping my face. I then got stupid dehydrated. I saw 4 or 5 people get taken away in like golf carts because they had heat related illnesses because they weren't drinking properly. I mean, it was, and especially if you are packed into like I had the Bayern Munich supporter section from Germany who, I don't know if they flew in or if they're just local to Charlotte and they came to the game, who were dancing and singing and jumping and this whole thing, making all of this energy and noise that made it even more uncomfortable. It was, and that's what has changed my opinion on this, was finally experiencing it, because I was from New York for a long time and it was like, yeah, cold games suck and the heat can't be that bad. And then I experienced it for the first time, like, oh no, the heat is so much worse. It is draining. Like, you can put on more layers. You can get hand warmers, you can get things to make you comfortable. Air quotes comfortable, right? That's all relative. You cannot take off all of your clothes. You cannot just bring air conditioners into the state. You can't do it. You are stuck in uncomfort. Yeah.
I just had Leagues Cup last night, and it was 8 o'clock at night to start the game against Pumas, and it was still like 90 degrees out, 90% humidity. The sun was not out. You're just sitting outside, and it felt like it was the middle of the day. It was still that hot. So
Yeah.
I think, obviously I'm in the extreme down here in Florida, but we've seen, like Andrew's saying, and all over, there's more and more of this heat coming all the way up the East Coast, especially, right? So this time of year, it could be 90 in New York. Like, that's pretty normal now. So I
Yeah.
feel like there is a benefit to kind of moving to more winter across not even just the South, but some of the northern states as well.
I could tell you Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of this week in New York, the average temperature was about a high of 95. So it gets super hot even up
Bouncing
here
off that
too.
concrete up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
terrible. You'd be down in the subway. I think it's probably like at least 110 down there.
Yeah. Well, some of us use things called cars, Connor. We don't need to take subways.
Well, I'm a Euro snob, so I like my
Yes, you
public
are.
transportation.
There you go. One more question on this before we move on to our next topic, and it was something that kind of popped in my head as I was prepping this, and it's the idea that if you switched and you had all these people who decided they weren't going to go to games, you then are forcing them to go back home and watch it on TV. Now, the problem with being on TV is that it goes to Apple TV, and we've heard, and this is going to be our next topic, so it'll be a nice transition. But we've heard about the complaints from people who are fans of teams, not just people who go once or twice, but truly support the team, but who then don't watch at home because they don't want to pay for another subscription service or what have you, whatever their reasoning is. Do you think that a change in the schedule might help these numbers, where it's early in the season and they say, oh, I'm not going to go to games, but I do want to see how the team is going to look. I'm going to actually buy this pass this year. Or will it hurt because it's so early in the season that they don't get the chance to hook them with a live game right from the start?
I think what you're gonna get, and I think this might also happen as well with like the actual tickets in the stadium. I think they're gonna try and sell like half seasons and things, and like just
Mhm.
kind of be like, there's a lot of people that will join in later when they're like, the beginning of the year and they've got football season's over and they've got more time. But I know we're going to talk about Apple TV in a little bit, but for me, a lot of it is just to do with the price point. So they can change and add value and do as much as they want, but it's too expensive, in my opinion.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll throw it to Connor first, and then I'll share my thoughts. But
Well, I'm gonna need you to keep me honest here if I'm going on too much of a stretch with this
and
one.
you know I will. You
I know
know I
you
will.
will. Yeah. I almost wonder if we're talking about somebody subscribing from the start of the season, if a schedule change might be a bit better then, because the way it's set up right now, I would think like probably around early February, you'd probably look to buy the subscription because that's around the start of the year. Like that's right after the holiday season where people are spending a lot of money and buying gifts for people for the holidays and whatnot. Maybe if you're talking about now you're starting your season in September, August, maybe people have a bit more money in their pocket. I mean, I haven't done the research on this of like, what times of the year people have the most money, but if they have a bit more money in their pocket, maybe they're more willing to spend on the subscription. That's kind of like the only thought process I have on that, and like a possible change to it. Otherwise, I think I'm not too sure on opinion on the rest of it though. That's kind of the only thing that's coming to mind for me.
Interesting. I think this is another moot point. I think you're going to have half the people be upset about it, half the people will buy into it, and it's going to just kind of wash itself out. But I am interested on the idea of the price point because I think this is a common theme that I see come up, and this we'll transition into this, right? So we talked about the price point. Apple TV was something that Don Garber spoke about, and he mentioned that they have 120 unique viewers each match, which is up 50% from last year, right? A lot of times when people talk about Apple TV, and we've talked about Apple TV a lot on this show this year specifically with various guests, which has been really great to see a lot of insight. But this price point always comes up, right? And it's I think it's like $99 for the year. Is that right? Something along those lines? Close? Yeah. I've yet to see any platform for any sport be that cheaper. And unless I'm not looking like MLB TV is a couple hundred a year. NFL ticket last season, and I don't know what the price is this year. NFL ticket was $700 last year for 16 games. NBA TV, I don't watch the basketball. Connor, you might be able to give me some of that too. But if you're thinking about price per game, right? Let's just cut it down to 30, right? You're paying $3 a game to watch at home. I think that this idea that it was too expensive came from a really small but very loud section online that said, "Oh my gosh, it's not worth the price because I don't like the league and nobody else should get it either." And instead of people doing their research and comparing it, they just went along with it. And I think you're seeing that now with this 50% increase from last year, right? And this is where I want to transition into it because if people are saying, "Oh, that's just because of Messi." Messi was here last year too. So if Messi's here last year and then he's here this year and there's a 50% increase, maybe people are recognizing that the value is there. Maybe what they're doing is working. I want to kind of share your thoughts on the idea of the number, right? 120K unique viewers and the increase from last year. John, what are your thoughts?
First, I want to say you compared it to other American sports, which I think is interesting. I'm not going that route at all. My comparison is to other soccer streaming options. And I think a lot of the market here in the US that MLS has not got is actual soccer fans. There's lots of young soccer fans that don't watch MLS, but they watch other leagues. So if you look at like ESPN Plus, there you're getting 10 plus leagues, La Liga, the Championship, et cetera, for 15, what is it, 99 a month for on that one. It is 11.99 a month for all those leagues. Whereas MLS, comparatively, just for MLS as one league, you're paying $15.99 a month. And then if you look at the quality of some of these leagues that are being on offer, like Paramount Plus, for example, and the way they package the fact that they have the Champions League, and that's actually cheaper than Apple as well. I think when you look at that personally, I think the value for streaming package, that's where I say it's not there. I also think that what you're talking about with this number, the Don Garber gave us, it's a completely outlying number, right? So there's no data to reference this from. It's just the first ever number that we've heard from Apple TV. So 50% increase on unique viewers. What was the original number to begin with? What's the new number? Like, this is the new number, sure, so you can calculate the old number, but what is that metric against? What data do we have to compare that with? Before, when you have actual TV and you have viewership and they can look at that and you can sell that to sponsors, how can you sell this to a sponsor? You're going to say, we have 50% more unique viewers. I also think that's an average. So how many of those are just Messi viewers and then they're averaging out across MLS? If you look at like Montreal's unique viewers, is that going to look so good?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of flaws in what they're trying to sell us.
Connor, your thoughts?
I mean, I think people can have valid gripes with, the pricing and how many different streaming services are out there. I mean, I think it's just kind of continuously climbing. They constantly continue to get more expensive. There constantly continues to be all these different streaming platforms that you have to pay for if you want to watch all the things you want to watch. So to me, I feel like it comes down to at that point, like almost a marketing game. Who's going to be the best marketer? And I feel like the answer at the moment is very clear. It is the Premier League. They are the far and away best marketers. That they constantly command the most eyeballs. They have so many more viewers than like any other league around the world. And based on that, I think if you come down to a decision where it's like, all right, here's my personal cutoff for how much I'm going to spend on all these streaming services. I'm going to take that money and I'm going to spend it on the Premier League because they may not say it, they may not come out right out and say like, oh, they marketed it better, but they'll just like subconsciously be like, oh, I want to watch the Premier League. Like I've seen more about it. Like I know the players a bit more than I do, Major League Soccer. I'm going to put my money there and not put my money on Apple TV instead. So I almost feel like it comes down to like, what's the strategy to kind of get more people to switch from somewhere else to buy your service? Not necessarily like we have to lower our price so that we can make sure that everybody buys every service. It's like, how can we get more people to be more committed to watching our league, especially if it's people in the US? Like that's supposed to be your cream of the crop right there. I mean, you should be sweeping up all those people as much as you can be.
I am loving this conversation because it has so many branch points into other things that we're going to talk about. So we're going to be able to wrap it together really, really nicely. One of the things that we will end up talking about that I want to start with is this idea of how are you going to spell, going back to John's point, how are you going to sell the sponsors, right? Well, they just announced that they have two huge new sponsors coming in Walmart and Amazon TV, right? So whatever these metrics are, it was enough to get two brand new sponsors worth millions and millions of dollars to come in and do their business here. That being said, I think a lot of people were more hung up less on the fact of where did these numbers come from, which is a very fair gripe, by the way, John. I think with it being the first time ever, where are the metrics coming from? Do you believe them, especially in the world of MLS where things become fluffed, right? Very, very easily to portray an image. It's a fair gripe. But, I don't think that they're unbelievable, right? If he came out and said we have 1 million unique viewers on each match, okay, red flag. 15 million people a week are not watching your service. I promise they're not. If you're telling me that 1.8 million people a week are tuning in at some point, right? Because the problem I had with the numbers as a number nerd myself was there was no definition on what viewer meant. Was it they flipped on and accidentally hit that when they were looking to go to Severance on Apple TV? Oh, that's a viewer to me, right? That's where my gripe comes from with these numbers
These are like viewers on X that just scrolling.
Right, yes.
Oh,
yes,
that's a viewer.
I accidentally clicked the link by mistake, right? Like, is that a viewer? Is it 10 minutes? Is it 5 minutes? Is it 90 minutes? What does that mean, right? And then, like you mentioned, the majority of those, and I think that this is a very easy to believe take, is that the majority of those are coming from Messi subs who are trying to watch their star, who are maybe the most annoying people on the planet, but we move. I think 1.8 million viewers a week is a legitimate number that I would believe with Apple TV, regardless of what that means, right? The problem is it doesn't take in people who have maybe multiple screens up, right? There are times where I've got Red Bull on the TV and I've got another game up here, right? So two of those views are just one. How many times does that happen, right? Nobody talks about what MLS 360 numbers look like. I don't know if that's in the viewers or if that's in whatever, right? We don't know where that works in. I think that the up from 50% last year actually casts more worry on what they were doing last year. Because I think last year they were saying, oh yeah, we're well over 1 million people every week. Well, 50% of 1.8 is 900K. So if you were well clear of 1 mil, you're leading me on to something I don't necessarily believe, right? But I don't think that this is necessarily bad. I think it's just not as good as it can be, right? And this goes back to the idea of, if we were on cable, would we get more people? And I had this conversation with Eli Lesser. Connor and I have this chat a lot, but I want to ask you, John, cable versus streaming, where do you stand? And where do you think MLS benefits the most from?
I do think the sponsors are important. I do know and have heard about the fact that several clubs have had issues with the fact that they don't really know how to report like they used to.
Mm-hmm.
So because they were so used to traditional and being a lot of the way the whole system worked was being able to take those viewership numbers, sell them to the sponsors. So now you see some of these markets kind of going back to that a little bit, and you see certain games going on TV, and even Apple TV, sorry, MLS is like, we're gonna have some games on certain nights on regular channels. So I think it shows that they kind of went back a little bit. My biggest thing is that we're now behind a paywall, and that just doesn't allow for organic viewers. It does not allow for people just to be scrolling. And I think that even within Apple, right? If you've gone to Apple and you're saying, I want to watch Severance or, Ted Lasso or one of their many good shows that they do make, you're then even not able just to flick over to MLS. You're still within a paywall. So
Mhm.
they not only, I think personally, made it a little bit too expensive for the value of product of soccer of what it is and comparatively globally. I think also they made it so that it's so difficult just to be able to find a game. And as we get closer to the World Cup, a lot of these sponsors that you're talking about, oh, we're going to want to come on, they all want to come on board for the World Cup so they get lots of eyes.
Mhm.
And they're going to want to be on national TV. They're not going to want to be behind a paywall for the world. I mean, the World Cup is not going to be on Apple TV. Like, it's not going to be behind a paywall. So they're just going to be associated with soccer. But the big thing is they want to hit those big viewership numbers as the actual event hits the TV.
Sure. If Don Garber gets the World Cup on Apple TV, build the statue, dude. The amount of money
I
that he'd get
mean,
out of that, build the
yeah,
statue.
sure. It's just not going to happen.
I know, right? Could you imagine the uproar of people online would be enough that would feed families. That sort of income would be insane. Connor, your thoughts on that?
I mean,
There it is. Straddle that fence. Straddle that fence.
you're such an instigator.
I like it, Connor. You got to argue with me. This is good. This is what we're here for.
This has been great so far, and it hasn't crossed the line of insulting, which is usually where we get to a Connor. So this is good.
Please,
We're
this
at
is
a good
No,
nothing.
point.
Alex, this is nothing, Andrew. We're fine. I've been way worse.
no, I genuinely like. I have not heard anything that I've been able to disagree with. I mean, I've agreed the entire way through. I mean, I think there's definitely a point to mention of like you can't really just like you said, you can't scroll onto a game. Like you can't just flip a channel and be like, "Oh, this is on, let me check it out." I would definitely be really curious to seeing like what the numbers looked like back then of maybe how many people kind of just stumbled onto the channel and then kind of stuck with it long term. Because I do think I could see people kind of flipping onto a game and being like, "Oh, this is good. Like I'll watch this for tonight," but then not really revisiting it later on, and then just kind of like, "Oh, it's like you watched the game one time. Like now I've heard of this Columbus team or I've heard of this, Cincinnati team." But not really like taking it much further than that. In terms of like, I guess the conversation on cable versus streaming, I guess it kind of depends on the direction, like the demographic that Major League Soccer wants their fandom to be. Because I would think if they want to go for the younger fans, then streaming makes more sense because they're not really going the cable route. Um, but I guess if they're kind of going for maybe people who have more historical ties and have been around like the teams for longer and the league for longer, then cable might be the slightly better route. And that's where you can like open that door up that John was talking about, where you can maybe get the couple of people who stumble upon it randomly.
Okay.
I know you have a lot of thoughts on this, Andrew. I feel
Uh,
like you've talked a lot about like just kind of like the cable side of Major League Soccer.
So Eli Lesser and I had a really good chat about this back when Connor was avoiding me even harder during something he called busy season. He doesn't work. He doesn't have. I know he doesn't have a real job, so I don't know what this busy season was. But we sat down and chatted about this because Apple TV was really, really in the front of everybody's mind, and we both shared this idea, and it was something that I have ever since Apple TV came out, and I heard people talking about this idea of cable needing to be at the forefront and to get these random eyes that doesn't exist in a level that actually can be measured in terms of impactfulness. The number of people who will scroll through the channels on TV, by the way, I don't know, Connor, if you when you're visiting home, if your parents or sister or whatever are scrolling through the channels anymore. That first off doesn't happen. When I go home, my pops, he's got two channels on. He's got the Mets and he's got Jeopardy. And he goes last, 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 last. There's no scrolling. Combine that with the number of people who have already cut the cord, completely and just do streaming. So all of that is gone to begin with. And then you combine that with the fact that you are now trying to get the attention of two different people if they happen to scroll over a game at 3 p.m. on a Sunday on ESPN. Either the people who have no idea what soccer is and have grown up saying, soccer's for sissies, I don't like soccer, or the Euro snobs who say, oh my God, this is terrible. I just watched Arsenal play Liverpool, and now I have to watch Montreal versus Austin. Click off. The number of people who will scroll through, land on an MLS game, watch it for more than 35 seconds, and then say, wow, I love this so much. I'm now going to follow this team every week, in, out, for the next 15 years, maybe can fit on this hand. Maybe.
That's
You
fair.
combine. Yeah, and this is my point where I'm saying I'm not here to. Go on, John. Go on. Yeah, I'll let you jump in
Can
there.
I counter with you? And I'm gonna
Please.
say that maybe I was thinking like old school, but
Sure.
really what I want to say is like I want organic viewers in terms of people that are interested in soccer but will
Hmm.
land on MLS that might not necessarily, go out and search for it. So maybe what we're talking about is a combination of, streaming but also organic viewership. And if
Hmm.
they were on Paramount Plus, MLS, or they were on ESPN, where someone goes to watch another league because these streaming services have so many other leagues and they're playing soccer all day on there, like CBS especially and
Hmm.
Paramount spending a huge amount of effort to have things like morning footy and like even covering NWSL all day on their channels. So
Yeah.
this is organic soccer viewership. If we were in a package like that that's $15 and someone's sitting there and they've watched Serie A and they've watched, Premier League, and then it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon and oh, an MLS game's coming up next. That's organic viewership of the right kind. So maybe we should modernize the thinking. And I think you're right that a lot of people are not watching cable.
Hmm.
So that for me is what I'm thinking with Apple, that you're really just completely sectioned off. You're not even getting the other soccer interested people coming over, in my opinion.
No, and I will 100% agree with you in the idea that Apple TV was the wrong place to land. However, Apple TV was making a push to say we're going to be the next big sports streamer and we're going to overpay for the product, $2.5 billion over 10 years. Nobody probably was even getting close to 1 billion, right? So they overpaid for a product for us to be the guinea pig. Don Garber said it's the best deal we're going to get that's going to set us up for the next 10 years to do all of the changes we want to make financially. We have to take the deal and see where it goes. I don't disagree with you saying that Apple TV was the wrong choice to be. I would have loved to end up on Paramount Plus. I would have loved to end up on Peacock, where the Premier League is. I would have hated if we ended back up on ESPN, where everything's filmed on a toaster and it's ridiculously difficult to go find games. I mean, it took me. I try my best on Saturdays to turn on any game that's on ESPN. Just kind of flip through and select one. It takes me 3 minutes to find something because it's so hidden in these things. It's not very easy. The idea that these people, I don't think that you're, and like I said, I've said this before, I don't think you're getting these people. And even if you, I don't know if you work as a coach with, the youth soccer groups. I know Connor doesn't quite, but I work with my kids at U15 now. So they're 13, 14 years old. They've got the attention span of a goldfish. The second you stop talking to them, they're off doing something else. And that includes if you are trying to show them something, like a whiteboard thing, they're instantly looking at the grass, right? Because if they had their phone in their hand, they'd just be doing this, right? So if you put them on a game and one of the parents switches on and finds a game, they're going to look up at it for 2 seconds and then look down because the only thing that they care about, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Man U, Man City, Liverpool, whatever, or whoever the biggest star is in X league that matters. If that game's on, they're like, "Oh, I'm going to watch him because my friends tweet about him," or I don't know what the kids are on these days because I'm not hip with the times, but they don't pay attention to things that aren't popular in the media, I guess. And MLS never has been, and really not for quite a while ever will be. So I don't think going back to cable changes that. And I do think that we need to find another partner or at the very least hope that Apple can get more people. So Apple had started going with MLB. If they can pull MLB over, it's a step in the right direction. If they can't, we're stuck on an island. And I agree with you that it's the wrong place to be and we need to make a decision to get out of it. the biggest thing that I can agree with people on the cable thing is what happened is they took longtime fans from 96 or 2010 or wherever you joined the league from who have been watching in stadium and in person, and then they said, I'm not buying another streaming service, so I'm not just going to watch anymore. And that's the group that I agree that this move has alienated. But we haven't alienated the potential millions of new eyeballs that everybody has seen, and we haven't alienated the people who are never going to watch anyway, right? The people who are so dead set against MLS being a successful league that anything that they do will be wrong. Those two groups of people never were in the bubble to begin with, in my opinion. That's me on my soapbox. I'm now done with that.
I fear I may make this like a 2 hour episode because I have two things I wanted to mention on this.
You never have
Um,
anything to mention, and now you want to mention two things? My goodness.
yeah, listen, I'm bringing my end of the bargain here.
New year, new
Um,
you, man. New year, new
the first
you.
thing I wanted to talk yeah, New Year in the middle of August. The first thing I wanted to mention was the group that you were talking about before, like the kids that are like 13, 14, the ones that are like, "Oh, I only watch, Barcelona, Real Madrid."
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious how much those people actually watch games, period.
They don't.
I
That's a great point.
I that's what I was going to say. Like if you're telling me
They watch ISO
Barcelona.
Speed. That's what they watch.
Yeah, exactly. They probably watched the Sidemen All Star game more than they've watched actual like
Straight
football
up. Great
matches.
point. Keep
Um,
talking. You're good. You're
yeah,
making
so
good
like
points. You're allowed to keep going.
if you think they're gonna watch Barcelona play against like Elche next year, you're out of your mind. They're not. You maybe get them to watch Barcelona, Real Madrid, or Barcelona, Atletico Madrid,
Mm-hmm.
and that's probably about it. Like probably same thing for the Prem too. Like as much as the Prem has been drawing eyes, and you got like all these people that are like, oh, I'm an Arsenal fan, I'm a Man City fan. If Man City's playing Burnley next year, there's a high chance they're not watching that game.
Mm-hmm.
If Man City's playing Arsenal, now we're kind of talking about a different story. So it's going to be hard to get those people regardless to like actually sit and watch a game, as you were talking about. The second thing I wanted to talk about was I definitely do like the idea of kind of mixing Major League Soccer and other sports on the same platform, whether that's like other soccer leagues or other American leagues. I'm leaning more towards American leagues though, because I feel like someone might be more tempted to kind of throw on an MLS game that's on the same subscription platform if the games are like closer together time wise. Because if you just throw, like, let's say you throw MLS onto Peacock and majority of those games are at 10 a.m., those games are going to wrap up by like noon. You're going to have this break in time now before you really get to the MLS games where I think people are just going to be like, all right, that's too long into the future. I'm just going to flip it off. They're not going to come back to it later on. But it's like if you have baseball per se, like you had on like you mentioned on Apple TV, let's say there's a 3 o'clock afternoon, 4 o'clock game. I've seen plenty of like 4 o'clock start games. Let's say the game wraps up around 7. You could just immediately go right over to watching any MLS game because majority of them are around 7 p.m. And I think you're more likely to get that person to flip on an MLS game than one that has to wait hours in between a game to finish from like the Italian league or the Spanish league before they can switch over to an MLS game. I don't think they'll come back to it to throw it on, but I think they'll do it if it's convenient.
Nice, Connor. Good
That's the
job.
end of my
John,
soap opera box or whatever.
Yeah, I
John, you
agree.
got anything to add there?
I totally agree. The timing has to be back to back to back. Like that's the yeah, and there are some times of year. I mean, I kind of akin it to when like the World Cup is on, and there's that like beautiful. You just like watch one game after another for like every day has got like three games back to back, and they're all at perfect times. That's the kind of thing that you want to have in this situation. But I agree with you, Connor. You can't have that gap. You gotta be able to fill the day, whether that with soccer or with other sports. But it's better to be grouped with something than be on an island for sure.
Good. I'm glad we've came full circle. We all agree on things. And one of the things that I think we can end on before we move to our next section is the idea that what is the target audience? And this is something we talk about a lot on the show, where if you put it in front of Premier League, La Liga, Bundesliga fans, I remember specifically, had it not been for Red Bull being as good as they were in 2010 with Thierry Henry, 2013, 20, Thierry Henry era, I would go from watching an Everton team that was top seven in the Prem every year to a Red Bull team playing against Chicago, who was like Chicago now, just dreadful. And it was like, I can't believe that I just went from watching this or the World Cup or the Gold Cup or whatever it may be, and now I need to watch MLS. That sort of change still exists in a lot of people's minds because the quality isn't there. And we've talked about that a lot, and it's something we're going to hit on just a little bit down the road. But the target audience needs to be somebody who will take in that with almost like a blank slate, right? Blank slate of what am I looking at? What am I watching? The one way that they can do that is by mirroring their competition to things that they know. So Don Garber also was hinting at the idea that there were thoughts and conversations about once again changing the competition format of MLS now that we've expanded to 30 teams. He specifically cited yet again more playoff changes because what is MLS without every third year change in playoff structure? If they were to make those changes, John, how would you want the playoffs to actually look? Your ideal playoff scenario. What do you got?
All right, this is gonna sound crazy. I think we should only play in the East and only play in the West all year, and then the playoffs are East versus West.
Ooh, I
I think
like it.
we get to 16 teams in East Division and West Division. Then that's 30 games per season, home and away. That solves the whole fairness situation. At the end of that, you go into playoffs and you play your opposite number. So, eight on the East plays eight on the West, and so forth. And you dwindle down, or however you want to do it. Maybe that's unfair. But yeah, I just think it would be more exciting, in my opinion, to kind of have that. Okay, now the playoffs are coming. We're gonna play another side. Eventually, you might end up even an MLS Cup final that might be two Eastern teams. It might end up that way, if you did it that way. However, but I kind of think that there's some unfairness with the way they do it now and the fact that you just don't have a traditional league system where you play the same teams in your division home and away to end up with a more even table. So I would kind of use this opportunity to fix that. But I know there's some other crazy ideas floating out there of mixing things like MLS and NFL style playoffs, which I don't super like.
Hey, John, can you get your screen mirror off of my computer and stop taking all my thoughts? Because I had a really big, drop the mic moment that you just stole from me. So I appreciate it.
My
Thank
bad. Sorry.
you.
No, I'm
You gotta
so glad
remember
you did
that
that.
you're on our show. Yeah, I'm supposed to be the one with the big take. I'm just
This is
kidding.
what I do every week,
Sorry.
John.
I didn't realize this was a big take. I thought everybody had this take.
Connor does this to me weekly, and he is just rolling around in his chair right now, smiling because he finally isn't the one who's doing it. Connor, your thoughts on the playoff changes? How would you like to see it change and be improved?
I think I might be coming in with the hot take here, but I actually like the playoff structure that they have right now. Maybe the only thing I would be open to in terms of a switch is I don't really care as much for the play-in game. I mean I get it because it keeps more teams alive later on in the season, but if you got rid of it, I'm not losing sleep over it. The reason I kind of like the playoff structure is I kind of like the best of three at the start because I think, and obviously this wasn't the case last year in the playoffs, but I do feel like you get in a best of three, you're more likely to get the better team to come out of that situation than you would in just a one off. Like somebody could just have a bad game, but in a best of three, you could still recover from that. After that point, I like the one off games. I think that's something that makes the NFL playoffs really good. I think it's something that makes March Madness as fun as it does. And I think back to the game of Cincy playing Columbus and that game being as intense and as good as it was, it would not feel nearly as much of that if you knew you had another game the next day after, no matter what. So I really like the one-off games. I would like to see that stay, as much as it's not necessarily like, oh, we're 100% getting the best team. I mean, I think that's where you get your supporter shield from. Like that's your best team across 34 games. but I like the one-off. Give me the fun, dramatic games at the end of the season to just go for the cup. I don't need some like NBA best of seven series every single round. Just give me one-off games. Give me the drama. I'm here for it. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, I too have always said that 2024 New York Red Bull were the clear favorites over the Columbus Crew. I've always believed that they were better. But you were right.
That's
It
why I
doesn't
said with the
happen.
exception of the last
Right.
playoff.
It doesn't happen all the time, right? Miami should have walked Atlanta just like
All
every team walked Atlanta.
right.
I disagree with you. I like the get best of three series. It's unique, it's different, but I don't need it to be super happy. Like if you got rid of it and just made it one outs all the way through, as you say, I'm not losing sleep over it. I don't care for the. I like that the game threes can get really intense, but I don't really care. Like that level of intensity in game three, you get in one offs. You get in home and away structures. You get in every other thing. You don't need three games to get there. Is kind of where I've always landed on that. It's cool. Like it gives good stories. I just don't need it. And my other thing is we got to stop with these 67% of the league makes the playoffs. I'm sorry. I'm overseeing a ninth place Atlanta get in, and no disrespect because my seventh place Red Bull made it to MLS Cup. Why?
I feel like there is a lot of disrespect, and you didn't have to call out Atlanta specifically.
You know damn well I
Could have
had to
said
call out Atlanta
you could have said
specifically.
Sporting KC. Like there's other choices you could have made.
Yeah, but I don't care about Sporting KC. I care about making you feel uncomfortable. So,
I
um,
love that you care about Atlanta.
um,
I think a
the
lot of the reason they have that 3 game playoff, right, is
mhm,
because of the fact that they have that 2 week window for the international break
mhm.
that's in the middle of the play. I think they just added games to make money and like buy time. So I think that could go away. Like obviously all this like depends on the schedule change and the change the playoffs as well. But I'm with Connor. Like for me, it's 1 game. Like 1 game, do or die. That's what cup soccer is. It's
Mhm.
not 3 games. It feels too much like baseball for me, Andrew. I mean, call me a
Yeah,
soccer purist, but it feels too much like a baseball situation.
yeah, I completely agree, and it's something that I just don't need. Like I don't hate it, I don't love it, I just don't need it. Like if you got rid of it, I don't care. But what I do want to see is stop making this, you know, 9 teams in the playoffs and play-ins and all this sort of stuff. If you want to do it, give me the top six like we used to. Give a bye to the top two teams in each division, a wild card round for those two teams, and then they move on and they play the top of the top. I know, John, you were saying kind of not like the NFL, but that would be very NFL like. But
I
we
was
talked
sort of
about
saying more like the NFL divisions. That's what I don't want.
well, we're gonna get to that in a second.
Yeah, that's a different thing.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that in a second. But to me, the idea was, oh, they wanted to put as many teams in there so they can get as many games and keep teams alive and stuff. Well, we're in Leagues Cup right now, and they made it such that 8 out of 36 teams make the final round. 4 out of 18 from each conference. They're not afraid to cut it down. Clearly, there's not a level where it's like, oh man, we have to hit this many to keep interest. They'll cut it to whatever they need to cut it to make it interesting. So I don't think that they're terribly afraid of that. But let's transition then into this idea of divisions, because one of the other things that kind of came out online was that there were these conversations that MLS chatted about divisions, and that was one of the reasons, John, why I was very interested to bring you on for this. 'Cause I know outside of the schedule change, you had some strong opinions on divisions and conferences as well. So why don't you jump into this idea of like if they were going to divisions, yay, nay, and what it might look like maybe?
I fear the repetitiveness of playing the same teams all the time. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea of soccer where you have, yes, some teams in your division that we're going to play once or twice throughout the year, and that consistency, but not, I don't, Connor, do you want to see Orlando versus Atlanta, 9 times a season? Because if we did divisional, like it's literally, it's going to be Orlando, Miami, Charlotte, Nashville just playing each other all year until then you get into playoffs where you're able to play, somebody who comes out of another division. For me, I think you've then just reduced your league down into a 6 team league. Like, yes, you're part of MLS, but the actual teams that you're going to see is just the same teams all the time. So I personally don't think that's enjoyable. I think if they had 64 teams in the league, I'd be like, yeah, sweet, that's awesome. Like we have a massive league and we can have divisional soccer where I've got 10 teams in my division and we've got a good amount of teams to play. But with the way we only have 30 teams at the moment, and you split it into four or however you do it, I just think there's going to be too many games played against the same opposition, and it's going to get a bit tiresome, in my opinion. Other people think it might accelerate like rivalries, but I feel like that's just kind of them forcing rivalries in some ways.
Interesting. Connor, your thoughts?
I promise I'm not just doing this to be nice, but
I agree with John because I can't have a natural opinion on my own. Is that what you're trying to say?
He wants to see Atlanta or Atlanta every.
He does. He just wants to be. He brought the scarf out, and I'm telling you, like you might be able to just say that you converted him to an Orlando fan now because that's just what he is. He just agrees with everything Orlando says.
That's not true at all. But I do agree with what John is saying here. I absolutely am on board with not wanting to see Atlanta play Orlando 4 times a year, watch them play Charlotte 4 times a year. Like I love, as John said, I love being able to see them play a variety of teams. And I think you when you go into divisions, you threaten to go years without seeing your team play certain teams in the other conference. Like you could go years without seeing Atlanta play LAFC. Like you could go, I mean, quite frankly, you could go years right now without seeing them play each other,
And
just
we
considering
do.
how many teams are in. Yeah.
And we do. Yeah.
And if you introduce divisions, you're talking about probably even a longer stretch of time because you're most likely going to play the teams in your division more often. And the schedule's congested enough as is, you can't add more games to make up for the fact. You can't be like, okay, we're going to play more games in the division and we're going to add more games so that you can play more teams in the Western Conference. You just can't. There's too much going on. So I think if you introduce divisions, now you're talking about teams playing other teams way less often, which I think kind of takes the fun out of it because it's hard enough to like kind of keep tabs on every single team and watch every single being able to like watch every single team across an entire season. Like it's easier to just kind of follow one team and then you can get a view of like how a certain team or player is playing when they're coming up against your team. So it's like if I want to see Denny Bouanga play, but I'm an Atlanta fan, or maybe that's a bad example because they're kind of around the same time. But just the
Yeah.
general idea, like if I want to see Denny Bouanga play and I'm an Atlanta fan, I'm watching Atlanta week in week out. If I don't ever get to see them play at LAFC, I may not necessarily watch Denny Bouanga play. But if he's playing against Atlanta, now I'm guaranteed to see Denny Bouanga play. But
Well, even
it could be such a long period of time between when Atlanta and LAFC play each other that you may not even ever see Denny Bouanga play. If he comes here for 3 years and then he leaves, it's like, oh well, then I never even really got to see him play outside of like highlights.
Oh
So
yeah, well,
I
you can
I
you
think
can use that
divisions is a bad
example.
idea.
You can use that example right now, right? San Diego's on an absolute tear in the Western Conference. I think I've seen them play a half a game of soccer because it's just I can't stay up that late because I'm old and I can't do that. But also I have no drive to watch them play in Austin or anything like that. Now I will watch them on 360 because I just have it on the background when I'm doing other things. But I don't sit down and naturally just watch them for individual players or things like that, which is a fault of my own. I understand that, but one of the things
Right,
I'll say.
but if they were playing against Red Bull, you would see them play
No,
and you get
absolutely.
to
And
watch
and
them.
what I'll say is I agree with you. And so long as a player like Lionel Messi is in this league, you're never going to see this happen. Because the idea of taking away Messi revenue from Western Conference teams because you're going to say, oh, we're only going to play East and West, the Western Conference people who all signed off and said, yeah, he can have some Apple money, are going to lose their minds. So not ever going to happen. But to me, I'd say I would entertain it. I won't go to say that I'm going to love it or I'm going to hate it because it really, really depends on how they set it up. So to your point, John, and I guess to Connor's point too, because he's just John's echo at this point, they can get this really wrong. If you set up divisions, you can get it so wrong in the game of soccer. Absolutely here to come out and say that. Not, I don't think it's a hot take at all. But if they get it right, I think it's really, really exciting. And kind of John, to your point, what I was alluding to before was the idea that this could be our first foray into conference and conference alone. right? You go in, and we've been talking for a year and a half now about schedule congestion and schedule congestion. 15 and 15. You play everybody home and away once. You get 28 games, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. You play, right? There's your playoffs, or cross, right? 1 and 8, 2 and 7, 3 and 6, whatever. Then that what does that bring you down to? 32 games. You're playing 34 plus playoffs right now. Everybody in Europe is playing 28 to 30 plus their conference games, right? Or their cup games and their league games. That opens up the door to go back into US Open Cup fully. That opens the door to keep Leagues Cup in where it's at. Doing it this way opens up a lot of doors to go back to what I'm going to use in air quotes as normalcy, right? The idea that you can go back to being what you used to be, which has driven off some people from some of the things you're trying to do. So if they do it that way, all for it. And the divisions, if you want to tell me that you're going to make it, instead of home and away, you're going to play the divisions home and away twice, you know what? I'm okay with that if they can do it the right way. If you're telling me you're going to play home and away 3 times, and then, like the NFL where you'll play home and away, and then your other 8 games are made up of just 8 random teams, no thanks. Don't need that, right? That is not for me. But if you're going to tell me that you're going to make it up and say, okay, let's say, because that'll bring it up to 30 games, I think, total, right? It's 2 home and away, so that's 8 from the conference plus the other 10. Home and away would be 20, so 28 to 30 games, give or take, right? Then you go into the playoffs, what we were just talking about. I think that's great. You're opening up 4 game weeks, right? 30 from 34, or 28 from 34, 46 game weeks. All those midweek games that are brutal to watch and brutal to get to if you're going to see them in person, they all go away, right? That opens up US Open Cup. That opens up Leagues Cup if you want to go back to putting it in midweek. Whatever it may be, it opens things up. Or it just reduces soccer fatigue. Connor had a what I'm going to call a hot take where we were talking about the Club World Cup and why the attendances were relatively low. And it was because we've been watching soccer for 2 years straight. We haven't had a break. We've watched the Premier League, then to MLS, then to the World Cup, the Gold Cup, this, that, the other. It's like, I'm just tired. You open up all these game weeks, you have days in between just to relax and not have to worry about it, which is, I think, a really big thing. So I'm not out here saying I would love it or hate it, but I would entertain the idea on paper to see how they would do it before I would jump and say yes or no. So there's my on the fence moment. Connor, go ahead, clip it for you.
You would be in my mirror there, Andrew, because I would definitely want to say that as well, that the Open Cup, they have to figure out how to give it its own weekends. Like they
Yeah.
have to fix the Open Cup when they make this change, whether it's, the calendar change, divisions, all this stuff. Give Open Cup a real chance to have it so weekend. Don't
Mm-hmm.
play it on, a Wednesday night, and give it some actual support and help and make it a real thing, because I feel like it's just never had that love. And look, Soccer United marketing, all this money coming in, maybe finally time to spend a little bit more on the Open Cup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and like I said, we've always been on the idea that Open Cup and Leagues Cup can coexist. This is not a one or the other thing. You can make it work, and this is, I'm taking it out of Connor's mouth here, but you can make it work. It happens, but you need to do it the right way, right? And if that means instead of taking out the mid, and it'll never happen because of who's in charge, but if it means instead of taking out those midweek games for the 4 games that you're going to make up, you take them out on the weekends and put Open Cup that way, go for it, right? If you can find out a way to make that work. I doubt it, because that's not how the powers that be have focused on it. But I'm all here for it, because I think it opens us back to normalcy is how I'll end that. But we have been going for quite a while here, so I want to finish up with the one topic here, and this has been phenomenal, John. Thank you so much for joining us. But before we let you go, I do want to run one more thing in this idea of sponsors. It's something we talked about early on when we were talking about the Apple TV numbers, but they were teasing that they had these big new sponsors coming up. And they've announced 2 of them. I don't know how many they were actually teasing, but they've announced 2 of them so far. Walmart was the first one, and Amazon TV, or Amazon Fire TV, was the second. So just breaking down both of them. Walmart, they are, and I'm going to read the quote here. I've got the quote here. They're activating something near regular season games with a ton of content from a creator network, which they are creating. They're the face of the new Leagues Cup, and they are creating dedicated programming on Saturdays at select stadiums, and like we mentioned, a creators network for behind the scenes coverage. just your thoughts on what this sponsor means and what it can do for the league.
I mean, Walmart is a massive, massive company. They got a lot of money. Yeah, who wouldn't want Walmart as a sponsor? We've seen with the Messi era, the Michelob Ultra and Lowe's and more and more. And like I said, when it comes to the World Cup, it's just everybody wants a piece of the pie, right? Soccer, we've seen in this country, will blow up at certain times. It did in 1996. It did, around the 2014 era. So it's going to happen again. And it's a lot of these big companies, they're seeing that. And MLS is, I don't want to say a cheaper way, but it kind of is
Mhm.
in some ways. It's a cheaper way to get in, right? Because if you think about, yes, we want to have the sponsorship and actually be, the sponsor to have an advert in the middle of a game where Brazil's on TV or England or whoever, the next best thing you can have is just being associated with the sport in some way in the lead up. Of course, we've got Lionel Messi here. They all want to be associated with that as well. And Walmart, yeah, it's, like I said, it's a massive company. It's a big deal. And there's lots of other ones that they seem to be having coming up, right, Andrew? I mean, the DoorDash, Caterpillar, Continental Tires, those are all, I think, renewing. They've got lots of things happening. So double digits is the tagline they like saying, double digit year. So obviously a big boost in marketing revenues. And like I said, let's hope that that only means that they're going to invest a lot of that after the World Cup has come. Don't just line your pockets. Maybe actually spend some of that on the league and the sport and grassroots soccer in this country to encourage the next, batch of soccer players that might become, World Cup stars.
John, how is Arthur Blank going to buy his seventh yacht if he's not lining his pocket with Walmart money? What do you expect him to
That's the
do?
wrong owner to use. He actually spends money.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he
yeah,
wants
but
to be Mr. US Soccer.
he
He wants to
does.
buy
He
the
want.
whole
Sorry,
thing.
how is he supposed to become Mr. U.S. Soccer if he's not lining the pockets of Cindy Cohn and Don Garber? Is that better, Connor? Were you
Just
happy with that?
listen, just because we have an Orlando fan on the show doesn't mean you need to dunk on Atlanta every time that you get the
No, I think this
opportunity.
this is exactly what you need to do. Yeah.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Connor. Your thoughts on the Walmart, the Walmart sponsorship here?
I'll keep this pretty short.
I
Uh,
agree with
I
John. Move on. Great, awesome. Thank you.
I love the sponsorship coming in because I think this is a bargaining chip for the players to come to their discussion with the owners and say, look at how much money you're getting now because of the product that we're producing on the field. Time to crack open that salary cap and pay us.
Nice. I think it's totally fair. The problem that I have with the deal, outside of that, we don't know how much money it was worth. Now, I'm assuming it's worth significant money because, as John said, it's Walmart, right? It feels so forced. Are we a creator network? What are we going to do? We're going to hire people to wear Walmart shirts and do TikTok dances outside of Red Bull Arena? What are we what are we doing?
They probably
Like,
will.
and
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. They will. And this is, as much
They're
as
gonna
you're
have
trying to,
MLS themed Walmart greeters in
yeah,
jerseys.
and I mean, listen to this thing about the I show speed at the All Star game, right? Like the All Star game is for the best players in the league to go up against the best players of whoever you're going to bring in, and you got I showed speed taking like penalties from the players in the All Star. Like, what are we doing, guys? The idea of I get it. You're trying to reach out to the younger generation who's locked on these bricks in their pocket or whatever. But there comes a time where it's just too much. And maybe this is old man on porch yelling at cloud, but it's crossed a line for me. Like and again, I don't know what this creator network is going to be or what AI bots are going to use to push out this content. I have no idea. But the other part of it was like this behind the scenes coverage, right? Remember when Apple TV was launched and they were like every club is going to put out hours of behind the scene coverage for every season they're in here? Has anybody seen any of that yet? I don't think I've seen a lick of it. And Red Bull used to do a ton of it.
No, I
They
think there's like a few documentaries on Apple TV that are interesting, but not like in-depth stuff.
Yeah, and the worst part is you can't find them. Like I never get like I got alerts for Onside, which I still need to watch. I haven't actually gotten a chance to watch it yet because I'm so busy doing other things. But this behind, it feels almost like they're recycling the same. And not to dunk on USL because I think USL it has its room in US soccer. But the way that USL was always like, oh, Pro Rel's coming, and it's been 10 years since they dropped it first. It feels like MLS is just recycling the same stuff, like behind the scenes, creator networks, big sponsors. Like the problem is that kids don't follow Real Madrid because Vinicius Jr. and is friends with some influencer who's doing TikTok dances at halftime. They like Real Madrid because Real Madrid is one of the best teams in the world, which means the product on the field needs to get better. They have this money. If they don't use it to get better, it doesn't matter what the creator network is going to do if your on the field product is bad. Because at the end of the day, like we were talking about before, if you put this on a network or put it in front of somebody who watches soccer in England, France, Belgium, Germany, wherever, the only thing they're going to say is, this is terrible, and they're going to turn it off. Because that's what happened with NASL. NASL came in and brought all these big names, and people tuned in for 2 days and was like, wait a second, this is terrible. I'm not watching this anymore. And they crashed and burned. You need to get better on the field, and creator networks aren't going to do that. But that's just me.
I agree with Connor, which because I didn't think about that, but the CBA is going to be up at the end of 2027. That's Don Garber said it's not going to happen before the World Cup. All of these changes, so yeah, they're going to look at this and say, hey, look how much money you made off the back of the World Cup and everything, and negotiate more, and hopefully it just forces the whole league to spend more money.
Yeah, I'm gonna disagree with you, Andrew. I know, shocker.
Yeah,
But
because you of all people are thrilled for the TikTok dances. I don't think you would even own TikTok.
I think you're just thinking of it like you said, little too old man with stick minded.
Sure, and
Because
I accept that.
because I
I
think
agree with Andrew about speed, though. That the game is
That
gone.
was
Like, no,
crazy.
that's
That
too
was
far.
absurd.
Too far.
I was literally about to say that I think that that's probably good marketing from them because he definitely has a younger audience, and I think the way you get the younger audience, because I think they will have that mindset that you're talking about, Andrew, where it's like if they get to the Premier League or Real Madrid or Barcelona first, they're not gonna give MLS its time of day. But I
Mm-hmm.
think if you can get MLS to get to them first, I think you got a better shot at keeping them around and kind of sowing the seeds. Whereas like even if they then find Real Madrid and Barcelona later, I think that there's like enough history behind them kind of like learning about the sport through MLS that they would still stick with it. But I think if you go the opposite route and you try to pull them over from a Premier League team or from Real Madrid or Barcelona, they're just going to be like, whatever, this league sucks. I'm not going to give it its time of day. It doesn't matter. So I think like the collaborations and stuff with guys like I Show Speed who have this young fan base, it could pay dividends on that. It could be, the door opening for a lot of these younger people who just really haven't given the sport at the time of day or given the sport its flowers.
I think it's really hopeful, and I was in the same boat for quite a while until I started coaching kids who have enough of a self control. That's probably the wrong word for that, but self determination maybe is a better word, where they can decide who they want to support and where they want to go. And the instant they go out and they say something like, "Oh, I'm a this fan," and somebody says, "Oh, that's stupid because this player is better than that player," they fold because they don't have enough of a connection to it. And the issue to me, and this is we're not going to go down this road because I could talk about this for an hour, is that when you are too far away from stadiums where, oh, I like them because they're close or they're affiliated to Atlanta is a big one for us down here in South Carolina. A lot of people, when I ask them their favorite team, it's either Miami because of Messi, or it's Atlanta Charlotte because it's the closest to us, and they know it because of the football teams. But there's no real connection there. They're there because it happens, and because we're so far away, they're not in the stadium week after week. They're not experiencing what we experience when we take it in and remember what that was about being in the stadium. So it's almost the second thought to them. And again, now you're comparing two teams that you watch on TV. One of them has a packed out 45,000 fan stadium with top-notch players and stuff like that. And then you got Atlanta, who's usually packed out, but in recent years has been. And this is not me trying to rag on Atlanta, even though we love it.
Yeah,
In the
sure, it's
past,
not.
in the past few years, as they've gotten less and less successful, less and less people have shown up, and because of that, the atmosphere has died down in that big stadium. The performances have died down, and they say, "Oh, well, this isn't fun to watch. I'd rather watch 45,000 people go crazy when a ball goes in the back of the net versus 35,000 people in a 70,000 seat stadium." That just doesn't do it for me, right?
Yeah, no, I listen. I don't want to Euro snob it up at the end of this episode, but
Yes, you do.
I've now had the opportunity
Do
to
it.
see a game. I've seen a game live in Europe now, and I've seen a
Oh, tell
game
me
live,
more.
and I've seen a game live in the U.S. And I'll use NYC, so it's a little bit of a benefit to you, so I can dunk on NYC, so you'll be a little bit happier. But the atmosphere at the Chelsea game that I went to versus the atmosphere at the NYC game that I went to was night and day difference.
Yep.
And if you had asked me which one, like if I had a realistic option on like which one I would could see on any given weekend, there's zero question that I would much rather go watch Chelsea play. And to be honest, that's a little bit of a tough comparison because I'm a Chelsea fan and not an NYC fan. But I think I would take it even if it was like Liverpool playing against, I don't know,
Oh,
Sunderland.
God.
Liverpool against Sunderland. I think I'd rather go see that and have like the insane atmosphere in the stadium than watch NYC play Montreal in City Field.
And that's my point. Is the atmosphere is all full of people who are like, yeah, this is a fun thing to do, without having the buy-in of this is my team, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
don't think, and to circle this all back before we get on, we still have one more sponsor to talk about. I don't think TikTok dancers are going to make kids go from, oh yeah, I love Real Madrid, Chelsea, and say, oh nope, Atlanta United is now my number one team because this person with 2 million followers on TikTok did a dance outside of Mercedes Benz. I just don't see it doing that. Now, your point on the money is great, and I agree with you completely. That should come in, and they should be able to say, pay me, because that's 100% spot on. The problem that I have is how they're getting their what do you call it, the handoff, right? I'm giving you money, you're gonna let me do X, Y, and Z, and this is how we're gonna market ourselves. Do it better than that. Put your logo on the sideboards. Get your name on the couple jerseys. Do whatever you got to do. I don't need a creator network. That's just me.
I do want to say that I think a lot of the younger generation sometimes, like I agree that they a lot of them follow these stars, these influencers, these TikTok guys, but I have seen a lot of young Orlando City fans that also understand what soccer culture is, and they support their club and they
Mm-hmm.
support the badge too. So I do want to say that there are young MLS fans out there who are interacting with their local team
Mm-hmm.
and becoming really invested in this sport because of MLS. Same with USL, so I think that grassroots connection is not entirely lost on the younger generation, but you need to get them in the stadium. You need to get them
Yes.
there. You need to show them what it is. You need to get their attention because, like you said, Andrew, they're not going to look up from their phone to look at a game on TV.
Right, and that was going to be my question after you made it, was how far away from the stadium are they coming from, right? Because my closest is 2.5 hours to Charlotte. It's 3 hours to Atlanta. I'm 6 to Orlando because I made that drive in November. What happened in that game? Sorry, I'm not going there. I'm not that mean. We can't just pack it up and walk into the stadium every week as much as I would love to, and unfortunately there aren't enough local group, and again, stuff that we should be working on. There aren't enough local teams here where we've got a USL2 team in Columbia. We've got Charleston Battery down 2.5 hours in Charleston. Everything is relatively far from where we are. So to get the kids to buy into what we're doing is a lot harder than if we were in Atlanta, where Atlanta's got all these satellite things. And it's something that, I won't go down that. If you want to look at our idea on how to fix that, we did an episode early in the season. Go check that out. I'll link it somewhere. I'm not going down that path because that's a whole other conversation. That's a very good conversation, but not today. The last one we got to talk about, Amazon Fire TV, the new home for MLS highlight packages and recordings of past matches. Thoughts other than anything different from Walmart? Anything you want to share?
I think just, why? Like you have Apple.
Mhm.
YouTube is your greatest asset, in my opinion, to reach a lot of young people. Just again, organic scrolling, right? You can't people online, they're watching things about soccer. Eventually, they might scroll across something made by an MLS club. That's engagement. They'll find that. So having all of these highlights and everything on Amazon, maybe they'll find it there. I don't really. I think they just wanted to give Amazon something to put on there, but they were like, "Hey, we can't obviously we have a deal with Apple. We can't do any of this, but we'll give you, I don't know, whatever that's going to be."
Yeah, the highlight packages. Connor, your thoughts?
I think two thoughts. One,
Like, are
I
they not
wonder.
going to be on? Sorry, Connor. Are they not going to be on YouTube anymore? That's the only other thing. Like, because if that's exclusive, that's messed up.
Right.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. Two thoughts on this. I think one is I wonder if this is Amazon's way to maybe try and like dip their toe in the water and set themselves up to try and win a bid for Major League Soccer when the Apple TV deal runs out. The other thing for me, I definitely agree. I think YouTube would be the better place for it. And if it's exclusive to Amazon, that's going to be really disappointing. But at the end of the day, too, like if Amazon gave them like 10, $20 million more than like what YouTube would have given them, then I think I'm okay with it, to be honest. I'd rather have the money and see that get reinvested in the league than have to like go out of my way a little bit more to search for highlights, because I don't necessarily think that like the highlights are gonna be something that's gonna like draw new people into like watching. I think highlights is just like a nice thing for people that are already fans to catch up on if they've like missed a game.
One of the things that Eli and I spoke about was the idea that most kids these days will not watch a full game, 90 minutes, which baffles me, by the way, because I will watch, and there are games where I will tune out. Red Bull have made me tune out significantly more this year than any year before, which is heartbreaking. But the idea that you got kids saying that they're diehard Man City fans and they've not watched more than 10 minutes of a game ever. It's like it's insane. So the idea of highlight packages is good, but you know what people who know how to use an Amazon Fire TV can do? Open up YouTube and click on it there, where it's a lot easier to do it. And if you're going to tell me that, YouTube might not be paying you something, maybe Amazon is giving you money for the whatever, great. Put it back into the league, love it. But is it really going to move the needle anywhere? I doubt it. Is it really the big, sponsor we need to be flexing over? I doubt it, right? Connor, I agree with you that, somebody made this point on Twitter too, that this could be a dry run for, what is Amazon going to bring in terms of interest? If we need to back out of the Apple deal, where do we go next? Because I don't think they're going back by cable. We had that conversation. I think they've burned that bridge, for lack of a better term. So they're going to have to find a new streaming partner, and it doesn't seem like anybody else is going to bring them on right now. And they're not going to go back to ESPN either, because they probably burned that bridge when they said thanks but no thanks. I don't think Amazon's the right landing home either, just for the exact conversation we had, where you're on an island in Apple, and you're going to be on an island with Amazon TV, and I don't know. But the idea that they've grown sponsorship by double digits since last year is, good. That's the most important part, if they use the money properly. However, we know that's hit or miss. We know that they always find a way to mess that part up. So I don't know. I feel I can tell how much I am turning into old man here, where it's like I hate everything that they're doing that is so coded to Gen Alpha or whatever. But they just got to use the money right. At that point, I really don't care what they do out after they get the money, so long as you use the money right. All right. Friends, friends, friends. What an absolutely killer episode. I had such a great time with this. John, always a pleasure to have you, my friend. Thanks so much for hopping on. Let the people know where they can find you and about your new project, which has been really, really cool.
Yeah, you can find me on X. It's John Rawlins OCSC. I am part of the Loud and Proud Orlando podcast. We cover Orlando City and Orlando Pride, and I also have another podcast I just started called Forever a Lion, which I interview ex-players, staff members, fans all around Orlando City, just basically history and their kind of stories, and finding out more about how they connect to the club. So if you're interested in Orlando, you can find me there. I also feature on Goals TV a lot, so you can check me out as part of the Wake Up MLS crew over there, where we talk everything MLS.
There you go. Make sure you guys go head over and give give Loud and Proud a check, because they are great friends of the pod and always do great coverage. But also the new project. I've been checking that out myself, and it's if you like our MLS history, it is a step up from MLS history. There are actually other people talking about their experiences, not just people reporting on other experiences like we do. So it's a great move, and we might need to take a page out of that book and start bringing on some more guests in history. So we'll peel off of that. But thanks everybody for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. See ya.